The night my father disowned me, I wasn't crying or screaming. I was watching a video my uncle accidentally sent. My family sat around the old Glendale dinner table, laughing, toasting, calling me their personal ATM. I thought the betrayal ended there. But then the cracks widened. A credit card in my name I never opened. Emergencies that matched missing trust funds. A cousin whispering about something Doug did when she was 17. A family lawyer email, copied from Google Images. And right as my phone buzzed with, "I disown you," everything clicked. They weren't just using me. They were covering something much darker. But what they didn't know was, before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family, especially the kind who smile in your face while tearing you apart behind closed doors. If any part of this story feels uncomfortably familiar, you're not alone. Ready? Let me take you back. People like to say every family has issues as if that softens the blow. But growing up in the Jameson house, issues wasn't the word. It was structure. It was choreography. Everyone had a role, and mine was to absorb whatever Doug didn't want to deal with. From the outside, our Glendale home looked perfectly ordinary. Fresh paint-trimmed lawn, a porch light that always worked. Inside, the air felt tight, like the house was holding its breath. Mornings were the worst. Doug sat at the head of the table scrolling his phone, the burnt coffee smell drifting from the pot he never bothered turning off. Valerie hovered around him, wiping a spotless counter with the seriousness of someone performing surgery. I'd walk in, mumble morning, hoping to pierce the tension. He rarely looked up. Valerie offered the same polite nod every day, like greeting a neighbor, not a daughter. Then Chase would stumble in, hair-damp gym bag over his shoulder, and the entire room changed temperature. "There he is," Valerie would beam, as if the sun showed up late, but forgivable. Doug finally lifted his eyes, usually to comment on my posture or my wrinkled shirt. "You should take more pride in how you present yourself," he'd mutter. The contrast built itself into me like muscle memory. Chase was the golden one. I was the reminder that someone had to keep things from falling apart. I remember being 13 when Chase shattered our neighbor's window with a baseball. The crack pierced the air and I froze. Doug stormed outside, jaw tight, but when the neighbor demanded an explanation, Doug didn't look at Chase. He looked at me. "You should have known better," he said. I wasn't even holding the bat. But I apologized. I mowed lawns for weeks to make up for it. Chase practiced basketball in the driveway like nothing happened. It wasn't the unfairness that stuck with me, it was how natural it felt. I didn't know it then, but that was the blueprint for everything that came later. By high school, I was working nights at a diner off the highway. I'd come home smelling like fry oil tips stuffed in my pockets. One night, I walked in to find the house dark, except for a candle on the kitchen table. Valerie sat behind a spread of overdue bills. "Your father's under pressure," she whispered, tapping the stack. "We just need a little help until he gets through this." Doug was upstairs watching TV on a backup generator. Chase was out with friends. I didn't argue. "I can cover it," I said, sliding my hard-earned cash across the table. Looking back, I can't tell if that moment was love or conditioning. Maybe both. When college finally took me to Denver, I thought distance would break the pattern. But guilt travels fast. Phone calls asking for favors turned into requests for money, which turned into expectations before I even realized the shift. Holidays were the same performance on repeat. Doug's proud speeches about community leadership. Valerie's quiet digs disguised as concern. Chase's bragging framed as potential. I played my part, smiling, nodding, paying whatever needed to be paid. Every drive back to Denver ended the same tight chest, shaky hands, a question I never said out loud. Why does it feel like no one sees me unless they need something from me? Back then, I thought that question was the wound. I didn't know it was just the first layer. Leaving Glendale didn't free me the way I imagined. When I moved to Denver for college, I told myself the distance would finally let me breathe. But guilt has a long reach, and Doug had a talent for tugging the leash without ever raising his voice. My first apartment was a mismatched collection of thrift store furniture and secondhand dishes. At night, I'd stand on the narrow balcony, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city lights, like they belonged to someone braver than me. Sometimes I'd imagine a version of myself who wasn't afraid to say no. But every time my phone buzzed with Doug's name, that version disappeared. Calls from home always came with the same rhythm. Doug's sighs, Valerie's soft, guilt-laced commentary. Chase's offhand requests for just a little help. They all acted like my paycheck belonged partly to them, like my job in Denver was a resource the family collectively owned. During my junior year, I drove home for Thanksgiving, already exhausted from exams. When I walked in, Valerie wrapped her arms around Chase, like he was returning from war. When she reached me, she gave a polite half-hug, stepping back before I fully raised my arms. "You look tired," she said. "Working too much again?" Doug didn't look up from the TV. "Riley's always stressed. She doesn't know how to relax." Chase smirked. "Someone has to keep the family name respectable." They all laughed. I joined in because that was the safest thing to do. Later that night, I slipped into the kitchen for water. The overhead bulb buzzed faintly, throwing sharp shadows across the counter. Valerie followed me in, smoothing her sweater. "Put on a smile, dear," she whispered. "Your father's under pressure. Don't start anything tonight." I hadn't said a single word. Still, I swallowed it, the discomfort, the confusion, the instinct to defend myself, but it settled deeper than before, like something sharp embedding itself inside me. After college, I landed my job as a forensic auditor. Irony isn't lost on me. My entire profession is built on spotting lies hidden in spreadsheets, patterns, inconsistencies, red flags. And yet with my own family, I ignored every warning sign. Then came the phone call 4 years ago, one that still echoes in my memory like a siren. I was sitting at my desk when Doug's voice cracked through the receiver, shaky in a way I had never heard. "The house. They're threatening foreclosure," he said. I shot up from my chair as if the floor beneath me tilted. "What happened?" "It's complicated," he muttered. Chase messed up. Valerie's sick with worry. You're the only one I can rely on. That sentence hit me harder than the foreclosure itself. You're the only one. I told myself I was doing the right thing, the responsible thing, the daughter thing. I paid the mortgage that month, then the next, then utilities, then emergency repairs. Before long, my bank account was stitched directly into the foundation of a house I didn't live in. And every holiday afterward followed the same script. Chase bragged. Doug lectured. Valerie smiled her tight smile. I funded the stability they praised Doug for. Every drive back to Denver ended the same way, hands shaking on the steering wheel, heart-pounding silence, roaring louder than traffic. I thought I was carrying my family. I didn't realize I was being used to keep the entire system from collapsing. The night everything cracked open didn't start with drama. It started with a buzz, soft, almost apologetic, as I chopped onions under my flickering Denver kitchen light. Uncle Rick had sent a video, no caption, no accidental emoji, just a silent rectangle waiting to be opened. I pressed play. There it was, the old Glendale dining room, the chandelier too bright, the oak table carved with Chase's initials. My family gathered like nothing had ever been wrong. They laughed, forks scraping plates, glasses clinking. Then Doug lifted his beer voice thick with pride and something meaner. She's not a daughter, she's a walking ATM. The table erupted, Valerie's laugh bright delighted. Chase leaning back smirking like cruelty was a sport he excelled at. Let her feel useful, Valerie added. It's embarrassing how hard she tries, Chase chimed in. They toasted. To me. To their personal ATM. I watched the video twice. The second time I didn't hear the words, I watched their faces. Not a flicker of doubt. Not an ounce of hesitation. They were comfortable mocking me. Relaxed. Certain I would never see any of it. Then my phone buzzed again. 6 words from Doug. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. If he'd wanted to hurt me, he'd miscalculated. The text didn't shatter me, it clarified everything. They hadn't just crossed a line. They had erased it, burned it, and toasted over the ashes. I typed one word back. Okay, not a plea, not confusion, a closure. Then I opened my laptop. Mortgage portal. Autopay active. 48 payments all from my account. I canceled it. Utilities remove card. Emergency transfers delete template. Recurring payments disabled. Each click felt like pulling out a nail I hadn't realized was hammered into my spine. 2 days passed before the panic started. Chase called first. Riley, what the hell are you doing? The bank called Dad. Fix it today. His voice wasn't angry. It was scared. He depended on me more than he depended on his own abilities. Then Valerie. Sweetheart, silence is unnecessary. The mortgage is due. You know your father's under pressure. Don't punish him like this. Punish. As if they hadn't been punishing me for years. I didn't answer either of them. By day 3, emails flooded my inbox. Payment declined. Auto pay failed. Service suspended pending update. Each notification felt like severing a rope they thought would hold me forever. That night when I opened the mortgage portal again, a red banner blinked past due. Instead of dread, I felt relief. But the real shift happened when a quiet voice from my past broke through the chaos. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't know. Riley, a soft voice whispered. It was Lena, my cousin, the girl who always stood at the edge of family gatherings, sleeves pulled over her hands, eyes avoiding Doug's. I saw the video, she said, breath trembling, and I need to tell you something. Her story came out in fragments. 17, a garage. Doug drunk, a hand gripping her arm, a blocked doorway, screams no one believed. Valerie telling her she was imagining things. Rick being ordered to control his dramatic daughter. I thought I was alone, she said. But after that video, I know I'm not crazy, and I think you're the only one who can stop him. Her voice cracked on the last word. I sat on my couch, phone trembling in my hand. For the first time, the betrayal wasn't abstract. It had a pulse, a face, a wound deeper than mine. The video exposed the truth. Lena's whisper exposed the pattern. And something inside me shifted from hurt to purpose. After Lena's call, sleep became impossible. I lay in the dark, the city humming outside my window, replaying her trembling voice again and again. When dawn finally leaked through the blinds, my mind was already running. If Doug could twist reality for Lena and for my mother, what else was buried under the surface? By 7 a.m., my laptop was open at the kitchen table. Credit reports, bank statements, public filings for the Jameson Community Trust. I scanned line by line the way I did when investigating corporate fraud, steady, emotionless, precise. Then I saw it. A credit card. Opened 3 years ago. Under my name. Billing to the Glendale address. I hadn't opened a new card in years. My pulse kicked once sharp short before instinct took over. I clicked for details. Charges for electronics, car repairs, sporting goods, work equipment. All purchases that screamed Chase. The same Chase who barely graduated high school but somehow always had the newest gear. My jaw tightened. He'd used my social security number, and Doug had let him. My first reaction wasn't rage, it was recognition. This was the Jameson pattern. When my labor wasn't enough, they took my money. When my money wasn't enough, they took my identity. At noon, I stepped into work with a calmness that didn't match the storm underneath. My coworkers looked at me differently, as if they sensed something had shifted but couldn't name it. They were right. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a new email subject line, legal notice, immediate action required. But the sender was a Gmail address. The signature block was a stolen logo from a law firm in Chicago. Valerie had finally reached the fake lawyer stage of panic. I forwarded it to Erin with a single line, "Is this supposed to scare me?" Her reply came in seconds. "This is pathetic. They're spiraling." By evening, the tone from Glendale had changed. Chase left a voicemail, all fire and insecurity. "You're ruining Dad's life. You think this makes you look powerful? You look insane, Riley. Valerie tried her usual guilt-coated poison. If this house is seized, people will talk. They'll blame you. Don't do this to your father. They still didn't understand I wasn't doing anything to Doug. I had simply stopped doing everything for him. But Doug himself stayed silent. And that silence felt different now, less controlling, more frightened. 2 days later, Uncle Rick asked me to stop by. His house smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke, the blinds half closed as if the light outside was too heavy to let in. He tried to play it off at first. Guess I hit the wrong button, he muttered. I just looked at him. His shoulders fell. All right, he said, voice worn down. I didn't send it by accident. You needed to see who they really are. Then he told me everything. About the investment Doug pushed him into years ago. How Doug promised it was safe. How Doug pressured him to sign, quickly trust the family. How Rick lost nearly all his savings while Doug maintained his hero of the community reputation. He hid behind that damn trust, Rick whispered. Used it like armor. Made me look like the fool. I left his house with a new understanding. Doug didn't just exploit his family emotionally. He exploited them financially, systematically. It was a pattern, and patterns leave trails. Driving home that night, my fingers tapped the steering wheel, my mind assembling timelines the way I did in major fraud cases. Emergency requests from Glendale, withdrawals from the trust, Chase's sudden purchases, Valerie's vague medical needs, Doug's speeches about serving the community. Every thread was connected. But the final thread, the one that pulled everything tight, came from someone I never expected to hear from. My phone rang again. Not Lena, not Valerie. Someone older, the voice rough with caution. Riley, she said, it's your mother's sister. Janet gave me your number, Aunt Teresa. A person Doug erased from my life so thoroughly I forgot her voice. I heard about the audit, she said, and the video, and I need to tell you something. My hand tightened on the phone. Your mother tried to leave, she whispered. Doug told her if she walked out he'd make the whole town think she was unstable. That she'd lose you. He started spreading the rumors before she even packed the bags. My breath caught. He controlled her until the end, she said. And he's trying the same with you. But you're the only one he can't manipulate anymore. Her voice cracked. She always said one day you'd wake up and when you did, he'd panic. I stood in the middle of my apartment, the city humming quietly outside, every piece snapping into place. The video, the disownment, the panic, the lies, the fraud, the stolen identity, the threats, the silence. Doug wasn't waiting for me to come crawling back. He was bracing for impact. I knew he would come. Men like Doug don't surrender. They scramble for control until the last possible second. But when the pounding hit my apartment door that Thursday night, 3 heavy strikes, spaced with precision, it still made the air in my lungs freeze. My apartment was quiet, lit only by the soft glow from the city beyond my balcony. I set down the mug in my hand, wiped my palms on my jeans, and picked up the folder I'd prepared. Every page inside it was sharp enough to cut him. I opened the door. Doug stood in the hallway, and for the first time in my life, he didn't look like an authority figure. He looked like a man whose world had shrunk. His suit was wrinkled tie, loose jaw, unshaven. The fluorescent hallway lights washed him out, exposing the panic underneath. Riley, he said, voice raw, we need to talk. I didn't step aside. About what? The trust investigation? The missing funds? Or the part where you disowned me? His mouth twitched. I said that in anger. No, I corrected. You said it because you thought I'd never fight back. He exhaled sharply, frustration edging into desperation. The board suspended me today. Donors are calling. People are asking questions they shouldn't be asking. They're twisting the numbers. You have to fix this. You want me to lie? I asked. I want you to explain, he snapped. You're the auditor. You can make this look like a clerical error. You can tell them it was miscategorized, that the withdrawals were for community needs. You can... No, I said. His face hardened. I raised you. I gave you everything. Don't rewrite history, I said quietly. You didn't raise me. You used me. He stepped forward, lowering his voice. If this goes public, everything I've built will crumble. Our family name. You should have thought of that when you drained the trust, I said. When you let Chase steal my identity. When you laughed about me at dinner. When you cornered Lena. When you destroyed Mom. He froze. For the first time, he had nothing to say. I lifted the folder between us. This is a summary of every questionable transaction the board already has and a few they haven't seen yet, along with your text message. Since you want everything to go through lawyers, I'm simply respecting your wishes. He didn't take it. I pushed it gently into his hands. His fingers trembled around the edges of the folder. You have no idea what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm stopping the pattern. His voice cracked. You'll regret this. I met his eyes, and for once I didn't feel small. I stopped regretting things the moment you sent that text. We stood in silence long enough for the hallway lights to hum louder. Doug finally lowered his head shoulders, collapsing inward, the confidence draining out of him like someone had pulled a plug. I stepped back into my apartment. Good night, Doug. Then I closed the door slowly, not with anger but with precision. The latch clicked clean and final. On the other side I heard a single broken exhale. The sound of a man realizing the empire he built was held up by the daughter he thought he could discard. The silence after Doug walked away didn't feel triumphant. It felt clean, like stepping out of a room that had been suffocating me for years. I stood with my hand still on the doorknob, listening as his footsteps faded down the hallway. For the first time, his absence didn't scare me. It steadied me. The next morning, Erin called. Her tone carried the calm intensity of someone who'd seen this kind of collapse before. They've launched a full audit, she said. Every transaction, every vendor, every withdrawal. The board wants your expertise on the patterns you noticed. Patterns. That word landed exactly where it needed to. Because what I'd given the board so far wasn't even half of what I'd uncovered. On my laptop sat 4 years of evidence screenshots, statements, email trails, timestamps. A timeline that showed every family emergency aligned perfectly with suspicious withdrawals from the trust. A map of how Doug covered his tracks using Chase, using Valerie, using me. And that wasn't the darkest part. There were gaps, tiny inconsistencies in dates and amounts that suggested something bigger, something Doug never meant anyone to see. I'd only scratched the surface. If the board kept digging, they'd find more. If they didn't, well, I could always guide them. That night, I sat on my balcony, cold wind brushing my face, laptop open in front of me. Denver glowed beneath me like a circuit board, clean, structured, logical. Exactly how truth should look. I sorted each file into place, building something sharp enough to cut through the entire Jameson narrative. People think revenge is loud, but real revenge, the kind built on facts, not fury, is almost silent. You don't need to raise your voice when the evidence speaks louder. Doug thought disowning me was the end of his control. He thought removing me from the family would remove me from the truth. But all he really did was release me from the guilt he relied on. They had used me to keep their world standing. Now I was finally letting it fall. And this wasn't the finale. It was the first crack. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit like and subscribe. Stories like mine happen quietly behind closed doors and polite smiles, and too many people grow up thinking they're the only ones carrying the weight. You're not. And choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. This chapter might be closing, but trust me, the story isn't over.